In this video, I'm going to be talking about the Watchers and one of the well-known Watchers that goes by the name of Enoch, which the Watchers are witnesses of humanity, guardians of sacred remembrance. So there was one of you who wrote in the comments and asked me if I had a good reference for who the Watchers are. What do they do? Why do they do it? And so I thought I'll just go ahead and make a video on it. So this is that video for whoever asked that question. Is a great question. And I have the belief that any question that is asked is the question that's ready for an answer. But I will just let those of you know who are easily influenced by maybe getting a little unsettled to think that there are illuminating, bright lighted watcher beings that watch and record what we're doing, and that's really unsettling to you, then you may not want to listen to the rest of the video. But I'll get into that and I'll let you decide. So there are beings who have been with humans on this earth since the beginning of time, not to guide us, not to interfere with anything that you're doing, but simply to be a witness. They watch in pure silence. They remember who we are since the beginning of time. Some call them watchers, some call them star ancestors, some call them Grigori, and one of the most mysterious of them all is Enoch. And all of them left us clues about why they watch and what they see in us now in 2025. So if you're new to my channel, my name's Nancy Rebecca. I am a registered nurse. And I had an out-of-body experience that left me suddenly sighted, which means I have a clairvoyance, but I have the type of clairvoyance where I can see into the spiritual world at the same time I see into the physical world. And I will share a story with you about the Watchers, which was my very first experience with them. And I wondered what they were doing, and it was one of my own teachers that taught me about them. So, who are the Watchers? Let's begin by stepping into a place of wonderment and curiosity. Because throughout history, across cultures and continents, people have sensed the presence of beings that will observe people beyond the veil. They go by many names: the Watchers, the Silent Ones, the Sky Beings, the Star Ancestors, and as I said, the Grigori. They are described not as gods, nor as angels in the traditional sense, but as powerful beings of consciousness, of that pure consciousness. They don't interfere. They don't fix. They simply observe. You might feel them sometimes kind of nearby observing you. They might stand right at the edge of your energy field. They may be floating above in a room. You may notice something as you're passing by on the sidewalk, walking outside, because you can sense their presence, their stillness in your deep, subtle awarenesses. So from the ancient book of Enoch, which I have not read, but I've listened to some podcasts where they talk about it. I did do research on it for this video. And so if you've never heard of the book of Enoch, it's Enoch. And I imagine you could do a YouTube search and find out more about Enoch. So in the ancient book of Enoch, the story is told that there were 200 watcher beings who were sent to earth to observe humanity. Some of those beings, after watching humans for a long, long time, it says that they fell. Now, most of them did not, but there were some that did kind of fall to earth. And they continue, and those that didn't fall to earth continue to hold their post to this day. So, this question really opens the door to something quite vast. So, my first experience with a watcher, I had, I was a baby clairvoyant. So, I could see things, but that did not mean that I knew what I was seeing. So, like for example, when I can see auras around people, I didn't even know what the word aura was. Or if I could see some cloudiness and congestion around the chakras, I had no words that could potentially explain and describe what I was seeing. So I really had to go through all of those kindergarten classes just to be able to identify, what they're called so that I could describe things. So, in this one particular time, I was sitting there and I noticed that there was up in the upper right corner of the classroom that I was in, I noticed there was a spirit peek. Its kind of head was kind of coming through, like half of its upper body was in the room and the lower part of the body was not in the room. And it was just watching. It was a meditation classroom. I was not teaching it. And they were just watching, and I wasn't quite sure, was that spirit belonging to somebody in the classroom? Is it an angel? Is it a guide? Like, I was kind of really curious about it, but all it did was just sit and watch. So there was a time there, like we're on a break from class, and I just sat in my chair and I just stared up at that corner and I watched them while they watched me. And then when the instructor came back, I asked her, or I shared with her what I was seeing, and I asked her what that was. And she said, "Oh, it's a watcher." Is watching the classroom, watching the teachings, watching your energy fields, how you're integrating the teachings. And so that was my first exposure to watchers. What I came to realize was that there's a lot of watchers. So when they talk about the book of Enoch, and they're talking about there were 200 watchers sent to earth, well, maybe it was then, but the world and humanity is a lot bigger now, and there are a lot more watchers. So then I was curious. I just wanted to go a little further to share this. Honestly, I was a little, I don't know if freaked out's the right word. I don't know. I don't know what would be a good word for it. But here's what I thought. So, do they watch me when I'm going to the bathroom? Do they watch me when I'm taking a bath or a shower? Do they watch me when I'm being intimate? Like, those are all those things that I was just like, okay, are you around? And I found myself, just kind of looking over my shoulder to see. And no, the watchers were not in my home. And even now, 30 years later, I've never seen a watcher inside my house. So when I was going to do this work, do this talk, I thought, okay, well, why not? Why aren't the watchers in the house? And so what I was told when I talked to the watchers, what I was told was that it's about boundaries. They have boundaries. And so they're not going to interfere with your sacred space, the space that you own. And so I thought, well, that's kind of nice to know. I wish I'd asked that question years ago. But if I just look out the window where I am now, I can already see two watchers out there. So what does a watcher look like to a clairvoyant? What does a watcher look like in the spiritual world? So a lot of spirits can pop in from a higher dimension. They just pop into the earthly dimension. They can't stay here a long time because, let's face it, we can barely stay here very long. And so they'll pop in and they'll pop out because it's dense here. We have lots of emotions, we have lots of creativity, and we have a lot of beauty, and we have all of those things. But they'll pop in and pop out. But the watchers, when I see them, they will often stay in that one place. And yeah, and they'll watch. So one of them, which is interesting that I'm seeing, is over a pub tavern that's about a half a block from my house. And as I'm watching them, they're just over the building. So they may watch people come in and out. They're curious, they're learning, they're scribing, they're tracking, and they are filing their records in the Akashic records. So I just had never noticed that before, and I thought that would be a good place to watch, is in a tavern. So, so watchers are all around, and I know that for some of you, you'd be like, okay, that's not cool, but there's so many cool things in the spirit world. So that's just one of them. So why do they watch us? Well, maybe they watch not because we're broken, but because maybe we are sacred. Maybe they bear witness so that we won't forget who we are. Some say that the watchers guard the integrity of free will. Some say that watchers record the unfolding of each soul's path, and then once they've recorded that, they will file it in the Akashic records in that person's library. They also observe how we move through duality, love, fear, and awakening. So remember, your own spirit is very evolved. It's non-dual. There's not like, love, hate, hot, cold, good, bad. It just is. It's part of that community consciousness. So they will often want to see how you're working through things. How are you working through things at work? Or how is a crowd coming together? How are they energetically interacting with each other? So they can record all of those things. They can also help reflect back to us the higher version of who we are becoming. Because often we forget, especially when we're not feeling at our best, we can forget that we have not only just a lot of good qualities, but that we really are good people. So I also like to imagine them kind of like a mirror, not just silent observers, but energetic mirrors helping us remember ourselves when we forget. So there was something else that came up for me, and this isn't a watcher, but a watcher often will not take any initiative. It's like they're just a scribe. They're just scribing, and they're just writing down and recording everything that's going on. So here in the United States, we have some real divisions that are happening. So might you imagine that the watchers would be doing here? They're not judgmental. They're not going to choose one side or the other. This isn't about good, bad, evil. It's not anything. It's like, okay, they're just recording, they're watching, they are observing how we're going to work out this puzzle. And then that teaches a lot more about the human condition. But here's the thing, there is another set of beings that it is their job to make sure, and these are not watchers, but my spirit just told me to drop this in here. They're not watchers, but the watchers can record, and if there is someone who has power and they're abusing that power over and over and over and over again, that may trigger this other type of being that will come and help the person remember that they have I'll call it a God-given power, a creator power, the gifts from the cosmos, however you want to call it. And they'll have a little chat with them. And so I asked these beings once, because they've shown up a few times in readings when I'm reading someone, and they will tell me, you can't move that block that gives them their power back because they are under supervision, right? They're under supervision. And so they would step in front and say, nope, you can't move that block. So then I said, so do they hurt them? Do they punish them? Like, what did they do? And it's like, no. It's just like if you get in a lot of car accidents, or let's say maybe you were driving under the influence of alcohol, they're going to, probably have you do community service, whatever it was, if it's kind of a light thing. So it's the same with the kind of watchers, but then there's another aspect to it where they will surround someone and say, okay, you're abusing your power, so we're going to put you on probation. So that's a whole big other conversation. But how many of us, so let me just put this in a human perspective, where you've been so furious about a situation that happened and you feel so invaded and hurt and harmed, and that there was purposeful destruction, and you were just like, I'm not even going to say all the things that you might think, okay? But the average human is not going to hurt or harm someone. You can be mad, you can think about it, but you're not going to go out and hurt someone. But there are others that can abuse this power. It gets out of balance, and then they have to be reminded by the spirit world to stay in their lane, get their head together, get their act together, and use their energy in more efficient ways without hurting and harming someone with their energy. Okay. So I asked the question of the watchers, if you are watching a situation that someone might get hurt or harmed, do you still just sit there and record while someone's getting hurt or harmed? And that's when they told me that no, that it does trigger or kind of set off alarm bells, that that it's like, all right, we need to call in another level, another type of spiritual angel that's going to come and surround that person, and then they will be more involved. But the watchers just simply, that's all they do, is they just watch. So like I have a spiritual being, it's called a file clerk. She tells me all the time, I retrieve files and I file files. I don't do windows. I don't clear haunted houses. I don't, like, she'll give me a list of things she doesn't do. I don't do healings for someone. I retrieve and file files. So the watchers watch and record and kind of just observe, and then you'll have these other beings that have to step in if somebody's power boundaries, because that's their job. Like, they're going to move in. Just kind of like if you call the police, right? And they're going to come and deal with the situation. Okay, let me come back around. So according to the book of Enoch, I'm going to come back to Enoch, that there were some watchers that broke the law of non-interference. They descended. They crossed the line. And why? Because they desired to be amongst humans. And it was, as the watcher, when I was asking this question of Spirit kind of takes me up high, and it's like, okay, look back at this beautiful earth. Look at the trees and look at nature and look at the beautiful creative embodiment of soul and light in the human bodies, and their engagement and all this love was just like so rich. And I know you might be going, yeah, where is that? Well, it does. It exists, and it exists in your life as well. But there was a sense of they wanted to have an experience. So, in this experience, the text says that they were drawn to the daughters of humanity. But let's look deeper, and perhaps they were drawn to the rawness of human life, and that I think we can all agree on. They were drawn to our emotions, our sexual energy, our creativity, our beauties, our struggles, our capacity to feel deeply. And this comes up a lot when I'm working with the spiritual realm, that they think we're so lucky that we get to have feelings and that we get to taste food and we get to hug each other. And so in the book of Enoch, there were some that they call them fallen angels, but they were watchers that came to earth. So can you imagine watching something so exquisite, so alive, that it stirs a longing that you didn't even know you have? Some shared, and this is the other thing, is that some of these watchers shared knowledge before we were ready, like working with metal, magic, healing sciences, not out of malice, but because they loved humans. They wanted to share this higher level of knowledge with the humans, and they got in trouble. They got in big trouble. So, and it was out of a longing and a curiosity. And the Gnostic mystics say they didn't fall from grace, they fell into longing, they fell into desire. And perhaps haven't we all? If you just think about maybe people who've been in a relationship and then someone ends up cheating, it's like, this longing desire is like this magnetic, it's so strong. And so some of the watchers did, there's a whole story on it, there's a big thick book on it if you're more interested in that information. So who exactly was Enoch? He was a watcher. Okay, he was one of the most mysterious beings in all of the sacred text. In Genesis, there's one line that's written: Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. It's just one line, but it tells us a lot. He was called by God. So Enoch became the bridge between heaven and earth, and in the book of Enoch, he's taken through all the heavenly realms. He has shown all the cosmic order, divine mysteries, and the truth of time and spirit. He was the one chosen to confront the watchers who had fallen to earth, to deliver a message, not a message of punishment, but from that higher knowing. He warned them of the cost, and then he rose back up again. So remember I was talking about these other beings where it's like, oh, no, you're not supposed to be here. You're not supposed to be engaging with these humans. You have crossed an enormous cosmic boundary. Community service. So some traditions say Enoch became the angel Metatron, the divine scribe seated beside the Creator who records all of life. But ultimately, Enoch was the watcher, the big watcher. So Enoch is the one who held his light, who watched without falling, who remembered who he was. So this is where we can take it a little more personal, the inner archetype of the watcher. So what if a part of us, a part of our soul, is our own inner watcher? Because you just might carry a piece of those watcher qualities inside of you. The inner one who sees, who quietly, steadily, without judgment. Have you ever noticed that part of yourself, the one who observes without reacting? The one who knows the true meaning even when the mind is spinning out of control? So what if this was your own sacred inner watcher? So I often call it be the observer, right? That part of your soul that never forgot. So here I'm going to ask you this question. What truth would you see in your life right now without trying to fix it? What truth can you see in your life? You can just simply watch it, simply observe it, and no matter what, you don't try to fix it. You just observe it and let it unfold. Okay? The question alone can change everything. So now I just want to share what came through in a meditation. It's a message I feel Enoch might say to us now in this strange and beautiful time in this year 2025 and beyond. You are not lost. You are not broken. You are in sacred initiation. So walk gently with your gifts. Speak as if your words are encoded with light. Touch the world as if it remembers you, because it does. The watchers still witness, and I too remain not, and this is Enoch, I too remain, because he's the big watcher, not to change your course, but to remind you that you already are on course. So there you go with the watchers. There's a lot of more information out there. And they're around all of us, and they don't interfere, and they hold a really beautiful, benevolent space for us. And it's always my sense when I notice them and tune into them, they're so neutral. It's not like love pouring out of them. We love humanity because that's too much movement. They just observe. I'm just observing. I don't give directions. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm just observing. So why don't you think about spending 5 minutes a day in silent witnessing where you don't fix and you just notice. I've done that before. I found it challenging. I am a nurse after all, right? I want to fix things and heal things. And then you can ask yourself, what am I observing in myself today? Even if you can just do it for a couple of minutes, it's powerful. You're also welcome to get the Book of Enoch and read about it, where I'm sure that there's a lot of YouTube channels that talk about Enoch. There's none that I'm recommending. Let your curiosity guide you. Ask your spirit to help, if you're curious and you want to know more, to guide you to some really great resources. If there's any of you here on YouTube that are familiar with Enoch or familiar with the Watchers and you want to add some more to our conversation, I would love that. So, and you can share this video with someone who feels like they're being seen and they just don't know how to name it. Kind of like my first time when I was like, okay, there's a spirit in the room just hanging out up there. So in the beginning, I noticed them a lot, and then eventually I became so comfortable with them that I don't even notice anymore unless I'm directly looking, like cross the street at the tavern. So I'm going to have to watch them watch me for a little while longer because I'm curious now. All right, everyone. So that's a little bit more about the Watchers and the spiritual world. And I look forward to your comments and your stories and your questions. And yeah, if there's a topic that you'd like me to talk about, just put it in the comment section. All right, everyone. Take good care. Bye bye.